Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa. Here's what's making headlines across the continent. Kenya's opposition calls for justice in the wake of deadly protests. President Ruto's hopes for national dialogue dashed as protesters plan to return to the streets next week. The unrest now inspiring young people in Uganda as several youth leaders vowed to march to Parliament Tuesday. This to call for an end to government corruption. And in Nigeria, a doctor vies to smash the Guinness World Record for the largest drawing with his 1,050 square metre long piece. We begin in Kenya, where President William Ruto is still calling for national dialogue in the wake of deadly protests that rocked the country. Thousands took to the streets over the government's plans to introduce tax hikes on several basic goods. The unrest forced Ruto to scrap the plans as well as dismiss his entire cabinet. But that failed to appease his opponents, who are calling for protests to be reignited next week to put pressure on Ruto to step down. Opposition leader Raila Odinga says justice for the dozens killed during the police's brutal clampdown on the demonstrations should be a prerequisite to any talks. Our correspondent Olivia Bizo reports.
In his speech, Ruto said that his administration has already made significant concessions in response to the demands of the Gen Z protesters. He said that he's withdrawn the finance bill, which sparked the protests in the first place, and he's dismissed almost the entire cabinet. And because of that, he insisted that the protests must stop. However, for many Kenyans, that's still not enough. A lot of them say they don't trust Ruto. Many of them are angry that instead of changing cabinet ministers, he actually just recycled 6 of the 11 ministers he named in his new or not so new government last week. Kenyan's opposition leader Raila Odinga published a statement on Sunday. He said that people need justice before any dialogue can take place. He outlined several demands, including compensation for the victims of the police brutality and the release of people who've been detained. According to the National Commission on Human Rights, at least 50 people have been killed since the beginning of the protests. So there's definitely still a lot of anger on social media. Another mass protest is expected to take place this Tuesday.
Well, young people in Uganda have drawn inspiration from protests in Kenya. In the capital, Kampala, several youth leaders are now planning to hold a march to Parliament this Tuesday. Their aim is to call for an end to government corruption. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power for 38 years, has issued a stern warning to any potential protesters, saying they will be playing with fire. Well, in a bid to stamp out any potential unrest, police have surrounded the headquarters of opposition leader Bobi Wine. Here's our regional correspondent, Clement Duruma, with the details.
Ugandan youth leaders are calling for a large anti-corruption march this Tuesday in front of the parliament in Kampala. The organizers, who are not affiliated with any political party, are accusing officials of embezzlement. The Speaker of the Parliament and several ministers have been accused by the local court of misusing public funds and are facing sanctions such as entry bans and asset freeze from London and Washington. Several public figures and influencers have launched the hashtag Stop Corruption on social media, saying they've been inspired by the Kenyan protest. But the police have already banned the gathering, fearing a chaotic situation. President Yoweri Museveni has warned the protesters, claiming that foreign forces are behind this movement without providing further details. He says he's already fighting corruption within his government. Protests in Uganda are rare, as they are often stopped by the security forces, who have been accused in the past of arbitrary arrests and torture by NGOs. This Monday, the headquarters of opposition leader Bobi Wine's party was surrounded by the police and military forces, with several MPs attempting to access the building briefly detained. The police describes these actions as precautionary measures, but Bobi Wine denies being an organizer while expressing his supporting the youth in Tuesday's rally.
Let's go to Ghana now, because the country is in the midst of its worst recession in a generation. A new agreement reached with creditors to restructure $13 billion of international debt could turn the tide for the West African country. But the months-long deadlock in negotiations in the run-up to the deal has badly impacted the currency and the cost of living. How are ordinary Ghanaians dealing with the crisis, and can this new deal make any difference? This report by Justice Baidu Theodore Abiwu and Godfred Akiye.
Josephine Nyamiye has been forced to cut her monthly grocery shopping by a third. Today, this is the fourth shop she has come to, trying to bargain and buy fish.
I'm about 200, right? Snail used to be like, let me say plenty, like 20 cedis. Now snail is just for 3 or 4 for 200 Ghana cedis. Yes, much like bigger ones for 200 Ghana cedis. And it's like, how? It's so expensive.
Ghana's economy has been going through rough times since 2020. The country's currency, the cedi, has lost more than half of its value against the US dollar since then. For car importer Michael Denchi, the impact has been serious.
We had to recently sell one car off because the rate is not helping at all. With the people that I work with, the secretary had to go. I had 2 permanent drivers. I had to let them go.
The new debt agreement signed with bilateral creditors, which will be restructuring $13 billion of international debt, seems to be one of the last hopes for many for a turnaround. But the impact of the deal could be relative, according to Professor of Economics Godfred Buckpen.
The deal that had been struck right now provides clarity and certainty going forward, and it's not expected to cause dramatic impact in terms of how the cedi will respond and all of that, because the full benefit of the restructuring had been anticipated and incorporated in the exchange rate over the couple of years that we've traveled this journey.
Ghana goes to a crucial election in December, and the economic issues are expected to be high on the agenda.
It's been over a year since 2 South African engineers were jailed in Equatorial Guinea. The UN says they are being arbitrarily detained. Some suspect their detention could be linked to an ongoing standoff between Pretoria and Malabo. The engineers were arrested just 2 days after 2 luxury properties and a yacht owned by the son of President Obiang were seized in South Africa. Our correspondent Anne Wenzel has more.
The relationship between Pretoria and Malabo is close to breaking point as the impasse stretches out toward the 18-month mark. South African engineers Pieter Haksem and Frederik Potgieter were arrested in February 2023 in Equatorial Guinea and sentenced to 12 years in prison for drug trafficking. They say they're innocent. In a note published earlier this month, a United Nations working group on arbitrary detentions said their arrest had no legal basis. While in South Africa, the men's families are doing everything in their power to ensure the 2 prisoners are not forgotten, and recently held a demonstration in front of the Pan-African Parliament. Pieter Haksem's partner, Kathy, has been waiting for him for more than 500 days and adds a small label to her calendar every day.
Yeah, no, we haven't had any word in 3 months on their health or their well-being. And we're busy with a letter to Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, and we know South Africa have got the power to help us. It's a political case, so it's in their power to help us.
Just 2 days before the South Africans were arrested, the luxury villas of the Obiang family were seized in Cape Town to pay off the debts of the president's son. Many are convinced that the 2 events are linked. Former South African Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, had visited Malabo in May this year to try and resolve the situation. The new South African government is promising to make every effort to free the men. However, requests for comment from the authorities in Equatorial Guinea have been met with silence.
Some sports news now. Eritrea's Binyam Girmay has made history once again by becoming the first African to take home the green jersey at the Tour de France for the most sprint points. It's the race's second most coveted prize behind the yellow jersey, which was won by Slovenia's Tadej Pogacar on Sunday. The trailblazer now adds another feather to his cap after he became the first black African to win a stage at the Giro d'Italia in May. Girmay says this new victory feels unreal.
Just super proud, to be honest. It's nice to see the cycling going like a global sport because if you knew the history, like the first time to win a black African rider and then the first time to win a green jersey, just like super amazing, Yeah, I'm just hoping to be to see for the future more African cycling. Doesn't matter which country. I just want to see more African cyclists.
We end in Nigeria, where a doctor is vying to break the Guinness World Record for the largest drawing done by an individual. The piece, entitled Unity in Diversity, spans more than 1,050 square meters. It depicts two giant hands holding a map of Nigeria, showcasing the country's rich cultural heritage. If certified, Fola David's piece will be the latest in what has been a string of world records claimed by Nigerians recently. Clemence Waller takes a look.
A dream 9 years in the making, and now just a brushstroke away. In the stadium in Lagos, Dr. Fola David spent 6 days attempting to break the Guinness World Record for the largest drawing by an individual, as well as promote the spirit of brotherhood in Nigeria. The physician and artist took on the titanic task of representing the cultural wealth of his country on a piece that measures just over 1,000 square meters, dubbed Unity and Diversity.
I wanted to do this to show us that there is no border. We are all one. We are all together. And if you look at this, you would see that there is so much beauty in Nigeria, in our culture, in our multicultural heritage.
Nigeria is home to over 250 ethnic groups, each with its own languages and traditions, which can at times be sources of tension. It also has a vibrant art scene as well as a rich history of record breakers. In 2017, the dancer Pinky Debbie broke the world record for the longest solo dance marathon. And in 2023, Chef Hilda Bassi held the record for the longest cooking marathon before being dethroned later that year.
As people that are very confident of our art and our culture, we like to always prove ourselves to the world. So this is not even like a Nigeria's best thing, this is the whole world. This is Guinness Book of Record. And I feel like it's just putting our name on the map even more.
Dr. David now waits for his achievement to be certified by the Guinness World Record officials. Should he succeed, he will have surpassed the previous record set in 2021 by Indian artist Ravi Soni.
That's it for me. Thanks for your company, and do stay tuned to France 24.